Hello and welcome to IPO, Adda. And my guest today is from a unique segment, which is one of the growing segments in India, IdeaForge. They're the manufacturers of unmanned aircraft systems. They're coming out with an IPO of total 540 odd crores, of which 240 is fresh issue and remaining 330 odd is offer for sale by some of the existing investors. Price between 638 and 672. The IPO is one of the unique ones in the current market. And joining me is Ankit Mehta, who is the CEO, and I have Vipul Joshi, who is the CFO for the company. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us on BQ Prime. Ankit, being a unique sector, first take us through what is the contours of the sector, what you do, what is the kind of business model that you have.
Sure, Sajid. Thanks a lot for having us here on this channel. What we do in ideaForge is we build drones for surveillance and mapping applications. These drones are utilized by our armed forces as well as utilized by several enterprises and government enterprises, which allow them to either create a safer environment for all of us, or they allow us to serve the various grassroots of the country by creating property cards and helping people get ownership of perhaps the houses that they've been living in for generations but don't have formal ownership of yet. So those are the kind of products that we are delivering to the market. These are all portable products that somebody can carry on a backpack like packaging and deploy it at the last mile of operations at this point in time.
Give me a sense of, since you mentioned that it can be used by armed forces and it can be used for civilian purposes for mapping or land mapping, which many of the states are currently doing. Give me a breakup of what kind of order book that you hold, especially coming from defense and for civilian orders.
So typically, we do not very closely track the order book in that split, but the majority, a large majority, would be on the government side, on the defense side of the house. Yes.
And these are surveillance drones that you manufacture for them, or there are heavy duty drones which can carry stuff.
Presently, surveillance kind of systems.
Okay. Vipul, can you give me a sense of what is the kind of margins that this business holds for you, and how does the street should look at such a manufacturing capability?
So our margins historically has hovered between 70 to 65%, and we are hoping that our margins would continue to hover around the similar range going ahead as well.
Now, you ended the year FY23 at roughly around 186 crores from revenue operations, 196 in total. What is the CAGR kind of growth that you see in this kind of segment? And if you can give us some, color to that growth that can be expected, or you've been growing at the rate.
So, Sajid, in terms of the growth, as far as the segment is concerned, I think it will be pertinent to note the history of the segment and what is happening in the ecosystem at this point in time. Particularly since the turn of the pandemic, we've seen that drones have become from a good-to-have technology to a must-have technology for not just our armed forces, but also for various civilian uses of this technology. And regulations have kept pace with that demand, and they have evolved in order to allow the induction and use of the technology in a more wholesome way than it was earlier. And if you look at the movements that have happened since the pandemic, we had the government announce the Swamitwa scheme, which is looking to cover all the 660,000 villages in the country and create property cards for the houses that villagers have lived in and have not had ownership of for generations. So that is one part of how the traction is happening, and that traction is spilling over to large-scale mapping of the entire land of many states, which is eventually going to happen for perhaps most of the landmass of our country. And we have various users unlocking around inspection, spraying, and agriculture side of the house. So we are seeing a fairly large growth as far as the segment is concerned on the civil side, owing to the benefits that have unlocked due to the various changes in policy that have happened, particularly given the push in the pandemic that was needed because nobody wanted to go close to people, and there was lack of availability of manpower, and therefore technology became a source of being able to deliver some of these solutions on the ground. And
Hmm.
since then, various geopolitical events regarding the various wars that have happened in around the world have again changed the color of the defense industry as well in terms of the participation of drones in that industry. So there
Hmm.
is a visible push towards inducting drones in very large numbers, not just in our armed forces, but across the world, given what happened during the last couple of wars that we've seen globally and the role that drones have played
Hmm.
in terms of what's happening out there. So we are expecting that the momentum is going to continue on both these sides, and the penetration from the
Hmm.
base that we have in India, which is fairly small at this point in time relative to many global markets. But the pace of growth is going to be very robust in the industry. That's what is projected in our prospectus as well.
Yeah. So drawing attention to the one latest report as well, where the market itself is going to grow from 43 million last year to about 800 millions by FY27.
Hmm. Uh, you know, Vipul, I was looking at your numbers. There was this big jump from 21 to 22, and from 22 to 23, it was the jump was nearly 17 odd percent in terms of revenues. Um, I I wanted to get an idea of how this market is growing and how you plan to grow within that market, because the growth is very uneven in that sense, because you're coming from a low base. So FY22 was a big jump for you, but 22 to 23 was 16-17%. Is that a normalized growth rate that you look to grow?
No, so basically, as Ankit was pointing out, the market itself is expanding now, and we are seeing large contracts coming in the foray as well. And right now, we are participating in different large contracts going ahead, which will have a subsequent delivery timelines as are attached to it. So the overall cycle of procurement itself, from participating in tender to receiving the order itself, is about 6 months, and then about 12 months period of a timeline. So
Hmm.
there will be shifts from when the delivery happens and the revenue is recognized, which we see as a continued growth in terms of how the order books will continue to grow. And the overall market size itself is shifting because the use case are also increasing from not just being surveillance and mapping, but expansion in agri, mining, and inspection, etc., which are also opening up the overall size and scope as well.
Also, Sajid, what happens is that in terms of revenue recognition, given that contracts have specific timelines in terms of execution and delivery, so sometimes that can reflect in the numbers, but largely in terms of the way the ecosystem is panning out, it's looking quite robust.
Because you're sitting on an order book of what, 192 odd crores at the end of FY23,
Right.
and 96% is coming from government orders there. So what is the execution timeline for that order book?
So depending on different contracts, the execution timeline shifts from being a 12 months to 2 years period.
Mm-hmm.
And revenue procurements will have a shorter timeline of about 3 months to 6 months.
Mm-hmm. Uh, since you are looking at a government order which is primarily led by government, so that uncertainty will always remain there, right? So because it's fully dependent on government, 96% of the book. What kind of diversification? So you spoke about some of the areas where you can diversify, but what kind of opportunities do you see there? Because now drone as a service, is also beginning to pick up use and pay kind of services which are which is there, especially for agri and agri spraying or other stuff which you do. Are you getting into that kind of model there? Because there are already quite a few players in that model.
So we are not getting into agri related businesses from a spraying perspective at this point in time. We are largely focused on the segments that we have seeded over a large period of time.
Hmm.
We will, of course, today we look at if you look at the two large buckets of use right now, which are fairly scaled globally as well, is surveillance and mapping. We are present
Hmm.
in both of those segments. We are looking to expand to doing inspections and delivery use cases in the future, as well as we are looking at expanding the business model from not just doing drone sales, which is our primary business model at this point in time, to also exploring drone as a service in the form of a solution. And we are working towards use cases in that direction, as we've stated as one of our strategies. And of course, diversification from increasing the component of civil use is absolutely going to be a factor which is going to increase over a period of time, as well as we are looking at going to international markets as well. And we have started to explore various other geographies where we are actively investing. We are participating in exhibitions and creating our local presence as well, so that we can showcase the value of the products that we've built and be able to grab market share in other markets as well.
One of the key disadvantages of having such a order book from government is the requirement of working capital requirement. Because payments takes time to come in. What is the kind of working capital cycle that you have at the moment?
So,
How do you plan to
Yeah.
bridge that? I know you're raising fresh capital that will help you in some way, but what is the normal cycle that you're working on?
So at an FY23 closing number, we had about 300 days of net working capital. Obviously, this is contributed by inventory days and receivables numbers of around 120 days,
Mm-hmm.
and inventories about 100 to 200 days. So, which is impacted by, because there's a preparedness that's required for delivering a contract. And as I said, that since we are participating in larger sizable contracts, we need to do preparations, get the raw material in, and then do the supplies, which has a certain gestation period. Going ahead, there will be efforts to curtail these numbers. We have debt facilities that are there from the different banks, namely HDFC, Axis Bank, which is supporting our requirements on the working capital side. We are hoping that these facilities will continue to help us achieve the targets that we have themselves for us.
And Sajid, the plan is to improve the working capital cycle, while the 300 number is a snapshot number. On an average, we expect it to hover around 200 days.
And that you plan to bring in by when?
So that
200
is
days?
That will be a continued effort going ahead to bring it down to those levels.
Yeah, those plans are there, and there are various strategies we are working towards improving that.
What about inventory? Because are you fully backward integrated within the country, or you are dependent on imported materials and chips and other stuff?
See, chips and all, I'm sure everyone is dependent on imports, given that we are still to see the fabs in India. But we, at an overall level, our import numbers are not very high. They are probably double-digit numbers, but not very high numbers in that sense.
So my question is that you are in a very competitive industry from that point in time, and it requires a working capital requirement as well. It's what is the kind of game plan that you have with respect to diversification, so that you can bring down these net levels, so that your metrics or financial metrics look much better? Because today, if you have 300 days of net working capital, it is a burden on your finances.
So Sajid, it has earlier in the history as well, has been much lower as well. So if you see the FY22 number, it's a far lower number than FY23 number, and the numbers before that also haven't been that high. So like I said, these are snapshot numbers right now, but the on an average number will hover around 200 days, which we are planning to improve as well.
And plus, Sajid, what we are also trying to do is that we have introduced reseller partner models that has also been highlighted in the prospectus, where we have a distribution network now in India. And similarly, when we are now doing expansion in the international markets, we are tying with international distributors to enter the market rather than company directly going and participating, which helps us safeguard from all the vagaries that we face today.
Well, what about product development?
Sorry, yeah. One of the strategies, Sajid, is to increase our indigenization, and that will again help in looking at improving these cycles in these numbers.
How much is it now, and how much you plan to take it up?
In terms of indigenization percentage?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's, as you can see from the gross margins itself, there is a large amount of value addition that we do right at ideaForge in terms of the technology stack that we have in the vertical integration that we have done over the years. So the gross margin itself is indicative of the heavy indigenization that we have on our products. On top of that, we of course, have a lower contribution of imports within the gross margin component as well. So it is not a very high number, but we look to improve it by double-digit, percentage points as far as the contribution of uh, imports is concerned. We're looking to reduce it by double-digit.
Hmm. You're using around 40 odd crores for new product development. Can you give us an elaborate on what kind of development that you're looking at, what kind of product, and what kind of market that you see for those products?
Sure. So, there are multiple areas that we need to invest in. One thing is very clear that in a technology industry, you need to continue to iterate on the products that you have. And you need to build better versions of the same products, which will allow you to address more applications. For example, in the next generation of products that we are working on for the existing product lines that we have, today we are able to address surveillance and mapping use cases. In the subsequent versions, we'll be addressing inspection and delivery use cases as well. Similarly, we'll be looking at improving and enhancing our software capabilities to be able to address more use cases, go deeper into user solutions as far as their outcome is concerned from the drone technology. So those are areas where existing product lines will continue to improve and we'll come up with new versions, which we have demonstrated in the past as well. We are on our seventh generation of the Netra product line that we have launched, and we launched one of the latest products called Netra V4 Pro in the last few months as well. And when we look at two new categories that we are looking to get into, we are looking to get into a tactical category drone system, as well as we are looking to build middle mile drones that will allow us to carry a few hundred kgs to a few hundred kilometers. And these
And
are going to open up both civil and defense use cases for us in terms of use cases.
when do you see those prototypes being ready?
See, prototypes will obviously happen faster. However, product development will take time in terms of getting through the entire certification process and full product development, although prototypes usually can happen much faster in that journey.
People, product development, R&D, and new features all takes a lot of capital. Your cash from operations have been negative, and though you're raising some fresh funds, uh, the funds that you're raising, how much for how long will that be enough for you to do that? Will you be coming back to the market to raise funds, because drone systems are evolving every day, every month, and technologies are getting obsolete much faster than drones are getting developed, right? So how do you manage that kind of capital requirement?
So, Sajid, as Ankit was highlighting, that we continue to push the development cycle on our current portfolio product line, and also open up the doors for new set of requirements and use cases that we are envisaging, from the current shape and size of the drones that we are today developing to venturing into different set, a little larger size of drones in the tactical and middle mile segments. We envisage that going ahead, we should be able to sustain our growth with the current set of capital. As of now, we do not project or envisage that we will be coming back to the market for further fundraise until unless the business dynamics itself evolve and change from an expansion, and the growth that we have projected overshoots our expectation as well.
And if I were to ask you that, Vipul and Ankit, um, give me what could be the biggest headwind for your sector. What will that be?
I think the biggest headwind today is mainly the drive for adoption and the momentum that the industry has. That momentum has to be preserved. I think all efforts that can be put in to preserve the momentum is, I think, the mandate overall that I believe all of us in the ecosystem need to have. And if we look at our government stance, we have taken on the mandate of becoming the drone hub of the world as a country. And if we have to live up to that vision, we need to make sure that there are no hurdles in terms of adopting the technology and the pace at which it can be developed and deployed on ground.
Vipul, from a financial point of view?
So I don't see a risk from a financial perspective because we are seeing now a lot of acceptance towards the hardware technology, which when we began our journey used to be a different use. Now there are different houses and schemes that is now supporting, as well as the PLI scheme itself is a support to boost the industry.
Yeah,
Mm.
PLI scheme is increasing the incentive to do more in India.
Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure talking to you today. The idea for Forge IPO is opening on June 26th. Price between 638 and 672. The company is raising nearly 570 odd crores through a mix of fresh issue and OFS. Thank you very much for joining us and joining us on IPO.
Thanks, Sajid.
Thank you, Sajid.